Kaminsky, fucking good in the ball!
Santel, all the way to the basket, foul, lays it in for two!
Good afternoon, Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball fans, and Happy New Year, Happy 2023. Welcome into Upstate Hoops Podcast here on FingerLakes1.com, brought to you by DeSanto Propane, Generations Bank, and Lil John and Barbie Orthodontics. More on all of them here in a little bit, but I'm once again joined in studio by Nate Sharman. Jim Sinicropi is back up here at the desk with me, and joining us today for the first time, FingerLakes1.com Sports Director Kyle Evans. Kyle, thanks for hopping on board with us this week. We'll talk to you in a quick second as well here, but Happy New Year, guys. Welcome in. 2023 should be another, obviously, good year of basketball here in the Wayne Finger Lakes, and good, really, I guess, de facto second half of the regular season.
Yeah, and now is where it starts. Everything pre-holiday break is kind of set up, and now it's already the stretch run. You're going to be through with January in 4 weeks, and then a couple weeks in February, and then it's sectional time already. So the big consequential games coming up starting this week.
Yeah, kind of crazy to think about. Jump right over to you, Kyle. Obviously, I'll ask the same question I asked Jim last week. What have been your thoughts so far in this season? You know, we mentioned last week a lot of how we've had some surprises, a little bit of openness. You know, what have your main takeaways have been so far with this basketball season?
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting couple of months. I would say for the boys' side, I would probably say Waterloo. I didn't picture them winning 6 of their first 8 games. I know one of them took a half-court buzzer beater, to beat Palmyra Macedon, but I think that's kind of an impressive start. I thought they'd be a solid team, but 6 of their first 8, I would say, is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And for the girls' side, I think the Finger Lakes West is interesting. You got like Bloomfield sitting at the top, 6-1. You got Marcus Whitman, you got Dundee Bradford. I think, that's a very competitive league, and I think it could go either way.
Yeah. It's good to see. I think we all have that consensus agreement, I'd say, because, look, I mean, frankly, it's always nice having the surprise like we mentioned last week. And going forward, I think it creates better storylines, better potential for everything to kind of really play out as, Jim, as you mentioned, right? I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about how little time there really is at this point to sectional time.
Yeah, and the top of the leagues are competitive in the Finger Lakes East. By Waterloo getting off to that great start, I wasn't necessarily consider them a contender for the Finger Lakes East crown. Now they could be argued to be one of the favorites here on January 2nd. January 2nd, yeah. And, the Finger Lakes West girls is competitive top to bottom. Wayne County girls is competitive. Finger Lakes East girls, Waterloo still has a stranglehold, but that's a league that's 4 or 5 teams deep. And they're each going to get their chance at Waterloo coming up here in January. Yeah. And, the only one that really is in question would be the Wayne County boys. Lions is going to win that league.
Yeah, seems to be that way every year, though.
Yeah, lately. Since Clyde took a step down, and not too long ago, not only Clyde, but North Rose Wolcott was strong for a few years. Gananda boys with Enrique Mossman, that era was pretty good for them. East Rochester was pretty strong, but for the past 3-4 years now, it's just been Lions League.
I would like to see Lions move out of it, but I know that will probably never happen.
Like Lions in the Finger Lakes East. That would really be incredible.
Yeah.
And Marcus Whitman's in there is a C school. That's the main argument against it, is that if Lions does move in, then all those B schools in the Finger Lakes East would be losing sectional points every time that they lost to Lions, or even when they beat them, they'd get less. And maybe because Marcus Whitman is not as dominant as Lions, that maybe the Finger Lakes East athletic directors and coaches are okay with it. Although a couple years ago, Marcus Whitman, the first year they came to the East, was really strong. But that's just some of the considerations.
Right.
The sectional points as people jockey for sectionals. But it would be great.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at a few games that occurred last week in our DeSanto Propane week recap. DeSanto Propane, 4 generations strong, is a trustworthy family-owned business with unmatched customer service. You can go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more information or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane. So we'll start on the boys' side of things. Main focus actually ended up being, in my opinion, on the East Rochester tournament that occurred on Wednesday last week, 12/28, and Friday on 12/30. Obviously, East Rochester hosted Wayne County, but Waterloo went up there as well, and it ended up being a pretty interesting couple games collectively there, because the other two teams in that tournament was Rochester Academy Charter School, undefeated team in C1, has been getting some votes in the state rankings, and Geneseo, who also getting state ranking in C as well. And would be a team that East Rochester would actually face in sectional time potentially. We'll touch on that obviously in a second. But the first game, East Rochester played Waterloo Wednesday, with Waterloo coming away with a 68-48 victory there. Nolan Saluka led the way with 18, Devin Mulvey Salerno 16, Markel Kingston Johnson 13. For East Rochester, Teddy Emmings had 16, Seth Lockwood had 6, and Eli Tanner had 6. Probably a little bit of a status quo, business as business type game, I'd say, right off the bat with that game, because the main focus would have been whether you're playing Geneseo or Rochester Academy Charter School for the championship or consolation game on Friday, I would assume.
And this is also credit to great job that Coach Rice has done in kind of rebuilding this Waterloo boys program, because you go back 5 years ago and, East Rochester probably would have won this game. But it just, again, it highlights the difference in strength between the leagues. But a big win for Waterloo to take care of business. And then you talk about Rochester Academy Charter School.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what's going to happen with these schools, these charter schools, and the way they bounce around classification to classification. They try to predict, I guess, the sectional place, Section 5 competition committee tries to predict, how good they're going to be and what class they get placed in. But it's so hard to tell. And so it looks like they're in C1, which means that we might be looking at one of the main competitors to Lions and Marcus Whitman, I suppose, in Class C1. But I wouldn't necessarily say that that was a bad loss at all for Waterloo. It was a close game.
Mm-hmm.
They lost by 8.
Right.
It's just tough to gauge with these charter schools.
Yeah, and that was what ended up being the championship game on Friday. Before that, East Rochester had the consolation game. They lost to Geneseo 70-53. But Geneseo, again, another team that we might see run up against here. They're 15th in Class C in the state.
Yeah, they're also in
rankings.
C1. So
Yeah.
look at C1. What's going to be tougher, Class C1 or Class B2 come sectionals? I think C1's going to be tougher than B2, which bodes well for teams like Minders, who will be in B2.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I kind of took a look a little bit before this morning. It was kind of nuts looking at what C1 kind of has this year with that in mind. Devin Mulvey Salerno, quick shout to him, made all-tournament team within that tournament, so really awesome to see some recognition for him. He's again, you talk about the whole team of pleasant surprises. I mean, he's a guy who, the first game that myself and Nate did, I was marveling at his defense, and he's really come along to tack on some really good offensive input as well, including the defense for him now along the way.
Yep, that's Chino's Pizzeria Player of the Game in our second game, especially for his offense in that one. So, yeah, he's a key part of that Waterloo offense along with Nolan Saluka. So, yeah, I thought they played impressive even with a loss in that tournament, too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with these tournaments that, we mentioned a little bit last week, right, is you don't know really what you're going to see per se going into these. I mean, yeah, you got your opponent, but you can't fully plan out, the next day. You just got to win your game for one and then figure out who you're playing after the fact with that.
For me, it's a look ahead to, like, sectionals and states. You're playing teams maybe not in your certainly not in your league, but maybe not even in your section, so it's tough to gauge the quality of the opponents you're playing. But it wasn't a good holiday break for Wayne Finger Lakes teams.
No.
They were dropping left and right against these out-of-league and sometimes out-of-section schools. The Geneva boys lost to a team from Buffalo.
Right. St. Mary's.
Yeah, and I don't know how good St. Mary's is,
right.
But they beat Geneva.
Were the Waterloo girls the only team to come out unscathed?
Yeah, which
Pretty
is
much, I'd say, yeah. I mean, at least of teams who were actively really taking the week to play games anyway.
Well, there were some games like North Rose lost to Cato Meridian, I think, Kyle.
Yep.
And, there's some other little games like that. But as far as games involving teams that might be at the top half of their league and teams that we'd consider sectional or maybe even state contenders, didn't go well.
No. I'm about to say, Palmac, I think, got they lost both games down in Elmira, lost to Owego, and then Union Endicott as well.
Yeah, I believe they're sitting at 5-4 now.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah. So, Though it's a good segue you bring that up, Jim, because I do want to highlight on the girls' side of things before we get to that Waterloo-Livonia game that ended up being potentially game of the week last week. Gates Shylife 50, Newark girls 55. So credit to the Lady Reds here. Sienna Galvin had 17, Takayla Vaughn had 12, Naomi Jones 10, and Leah Ramos had 8. But more importantly, head coach Dan Kearney won game number 399 on her career there, which is really impressive. It's collective for her.
Yeah.
But, she has a couple opportunities coming up for win number 400 this week. And, again, though, just to highlight, though, I mean, you mentioned Newark taking on a Class A school and beating them last week.
Yeah, Newark is a team that, unlike the boys, lives at the bottom of the league standings in the Finger Lakes East for the better part of the last 10 years. But maybe they're on the way up. But again, that is one of the reasons that happens is like once the regular season starts in the FL East, if you're the Newark girls, you're playing like really, really good opponents every single game. There's no real nights off in the Finger Lakes East Girls League except for maybe Geneva, and that's just recently. Geneva I can remember not too long ago when Geneva and Wayne girls were facing each other in the sectional finals. Since then, both Geneva and Wayne are down a little bit, but other than that, Newark's looking at whether it's Minders, Mid-Lakes, or Waterloo or Palmac. You got to play those teams twice. Mm-hmm. So in order to get to the point of respectability, you need to start winning some of those games against the top half of the league. And so we'll find out if the program has kind of evolved to that point yet, because Waterloo looks to be as good as ever. Minders girls are improved over, I think, what they've been for the past few years. And Mid-Lakes and Palmac might be a little off of the pace, certainly Mid-Lakes, from the state caliber teams that they've had a few years ago. But still, can Newark break into that group?
Yeah, let's then transition over here quickly. Go over to you first here, Kyle. Livonia-Waterloo. Game of the week matchup, potential game of the year matchup that we didn't even see kind of coming potentially because it was a tournament game.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the ending. Livonia was right in it. They put up a pretty good fight. A lot of free throws shooting at the end. A lot of, they were playing the fall game at the end. And, Waterloo just made their free throws, and that honestly was the difference in the game. I don't remember the exact number, but I remember Waterloo's coach sending out an email saying that, they made a good amount of free throws in the final 2 minutes to secure the win.
Yeah, to kind of set the table for you quickly, Livonia and Waterloo went into this game undefeated. Livonia was ranked 9th in Class B. Waterloo's currently 4th in Class B in the state.
And they're both B1 schools,
yeah.
Same section.
Yeah. I mean, this has all the matchups of maybe, again, talk about matchups potentially coming back around in sectional time. And in this case, it'd be the first weekend of March potentially here where they'd see each other again. And with that one, more all to do. Sectional block again on the line there.
And it's honestly incredible to see what Waterloo has done. They just don't lose very much, and they find a way. Even in this game, they finally played a team that is up to their level, and look, they find a way to win, and that's what great teams do. And
I saw that a lot last year in the regular season, where Waterloo was playing Finger Lakes East teams, and it would be close in the third and sometimes the fourth quarter, but Waterloo would prevail. Here's another example of a close game. So you got to give Coach Mike Bree credit, and you got to give the girls credit. You just get that mentality. So I don't know what Livonia's mindset is, but I can imagine you get towards the end of this game and it's close, and the Waterloo girls are probably like, well, we're going to win this game like we did every other game. Let's just play smart and hard to the end. And Livonia's probably like, wow, we got a chance to beat Waterloo here. It's just a kind of a different mindset, I think. So I think when you have enough, is the success that Waterloo has had over the past few years, you expect to win in those situations, and they did again here.
Yeah, the moment never seems too big. Like when they're under, you would think pressure, it just doesn't even bother them. They just continue to play like they do, and they find ways to win. And they're a great team. And I honestly don't know if they'll lose a game this season. That's how good they are.
Well, that's the question. So they're going to be challenged in league, and if one thing from this result, sure, Waterloo won 64-60, but it shows me that it's not going to be a cakewalk to another sectional title for Waterloo come postseason. If Livonia's a B1 team, so they'll have to go through them along with all their Finger Lakes East opponents, and and throw in a couple other good ones. And so, we'll see. They don't have Principia White in the middle anymore. But they obviously have tons of talent, more guard oriented this year across the board, but lacking a little bit in size. So,
yeah, I mean, I to kind of go back to the Wild though with that a little bit. I remember another game that me and Nate did, against Paul Mac. It was a little bit close there, and second half of the game when Logan Amadon came in, she stepped up her play. That's when they went on a big run. So, I think that's where that talent kind of comes in. I think that's where really actually, excuse me, maybe more so the chemistry of it. And Waterloo's a really good example of playing together like all the way up through. I mean, that's a group of girls that have played together all the way up. And I mean, when you can play off each other's tendencies like that, I think, if you were to lose a couple pieces along the way, that still can carry in my opinion, really far when it matters most.
Yeah, and Jazzy Lewis has really stepped up offensively. We saw her play such good defense, towards the end of the year last year. But from what I could tell this year, they've made her a real focal point in terms of offense. So, and she's really stepped up, and she's delivered so far on this young season. She was really good in that game we were at, Paul, against Paul Mac.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she had 15 against Livonia, second leading scorer in that game behind Natalie DeSanto at 16. So I think that's, again, a little bit of further proof in the pudding, if you will, for that case.
And another big thing is three-point shooting. I've been seeing they've been making a lot of three-pointers, and obviously three-pointers will win you games. And that happened against was it Livonia, I believe, last week. They made three-pointers, and that really helps them big time. Morgan Caraballo, is a very good three-point shooter. They just got a lot of different ways they can score, and like I said, they're just a really good team.
Yeah, multifaceted, right? Swiss Army knife it. It's tough to be beat when you have different areas you can go to and succeed in them at that point.
Well, I think the recipe for beating Waterloo, it's simple, easier said than done. But number one, you can't turn the ball over. You got to be able to keep your cool, get the ball across half court, and make it a half court game on both sides. That's why so many times when Waterloo and their opponents have been close heading into maybe sometimes even the third quarter, then they just start to self-implode under the full court pressure, and that leads to Waterloo offense. Waterloo's best offense is in transition after a defensive steal. If you force them to play in the half court, you got a much better chance.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's time we transition over to our power rankings, Generations Bank power rankings. Generations Bank has been serving the financial needs of the Finger Lakes region since 1870. Generations combines the best of modern banking with dedication to our local communities. Whether you're looking for a checking account, CDs, home improvement loan, you name it, they have what you need. They're committed to serving and giving back to our communities. You can visit them online at mygenbank.com. Generations Bank, member FDIC, and equal housing lender. We'll start with the girls' power rankings this week. And stop if you've heard us here before. Waterloo in the number one spot again this week, followed by East Rochester at the top. A little bit of a shakeup on the girls' side of things comparatively to last week on the boys' side of things. So obviously we'll start with the girls here. Really, I think the teams that really went out and succeeded last week brought themselves back up to the top, right? Waterloo, East Rochester, Mid Lakes, Paul Mac. Look at Bloomfield as well, coming in at 5 now. At least with Waterloo, East Rochester, right, we've expected them to be up there. They remain up there to continue doing what they've done.
Yeah, my first take here is that there's no way that Bloomfield beats Minders if they play head-to-head. They play different schedules, so I could see why the votes might come in that way, but yeah, Minders at 6 is better than Bloomfield at 5 if they were to play head. But different classifications and everything too. Just for discussion purposes, that's my first take when looking at this here. And then remember, Minders had Mid Lakes down by 20 points in the second quarter when they played in Seneca Falls, and Mid Lakes came back to squeak that one out and get the win. If not for that, you might see Minders as high as 3 and Mid Lakes down at 6. So with the limited number of league matchups so far, that's all going to change over the next few weeks. You say that this hasn't changed much since last week, you're right. But now week to week going forward through January, I think you'll see a lot of shakeup here. but maybe not at the top with Waterloo and East Rochester, because I don't know how many times East Rochester's going to be truly challenged in the Wayne County League between Clyde and Gananda maybe, and Lions, I suppose. But, Waterloo and East Rochester, if things go like they have the past few years, they're going to be 1 and 2 right through to the end.
Yeah, I was about to say that to me, the biggest, movement here was obviously Clyde Savannah. They had a rough week, and it shows. I mean, they fell down to 7th, and they're still a really good team. Just picked probably the wrong week to have a couple bad games really crop up.
Well, they're also the second highest team in Wayne County on our power rankings. You got 5 Finger Lakes East teams, East Rochester and Bloomfield, that composes the teams that are ahead of Clyde Savannah. And did Bloomfield and Clyde play this year? No,
I don't think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be an interesting matchup to see. But yeah, my main takeaway is that I think Minder should probably be ahead of Bloomfield there, and then you can make an argument that maybe Marcus Whitman should be ahead of Clyde.
Clyde did play Bloomfield.
Yeah, I thought they did.
Oh, really?
First game of the season, Clyde.
That's why.
Yeah.
And who won?
Clyde 13-point win.
Yeah, Clyde won by 13. So I mean, we got to take a look at that stuff before we make our votes for the power rankings. I just don't think Bloomfield should be 5, but.
Yeah, they started 0-1. I mean, they've won 6 in a row, but as you're
against
saying,
who?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You have to look at their schedule. I mean, sometimes records don't show how good a team really is because of who they're playing in their league. So I think that is a team to watch, just to see how legit they are when they actually do play better competition. But right now, 6-1, I guess, is not too bad for a team.
Nate, what classification are the Bloomfield girls?
The Bloomfield girls are.
I believe I remember seeing them in one of the C1.
Yeah, they're definitely C.
Yeah, C1.
C1.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so strong team in C1, but maybe a little overvalued in this week's power rankings.
Now let's head over to the boys' slate. The boys pretty much stayed ho-hum in terms of really any true movement. The only movement we really saw was closer to the bottom, really out of anything. The boys actually really had an overall, compared to the girls' side of things, a lot of teams actually remained idle compared to the girls' counterparts. I know, peel back like the curtain here a little bit, we have like a master schedule we look at, and just because of you just have everybody listed as like TBA in these tournaments, kind of seems like it might be a loaded schedule every now and then, but it's just not. And that was the case certainly on the boys' side of things, where, like I said, kind of remained ho-hum really from about 1 through 7. At that point, you got a couple different movements, but other than that, boys pretty much remained the same coming out of last week.
Yeah, I know. I look at the boys' power rankings here, and Lions #1. That's fine. I agree with that. It's still tough to get a gauge on Geneva.
They've only played 4 games, I believe. Geneva.
Yeah, and then one of them, of course, was against this team from Buffalo that they lost to this past week. But just eye test. I mean, I guess Waterloo does deserve to be #2. I don't know if they'll be there a couple weeks from now. It's going to be fun watching all their games to see if maybe they are for real. Wayne looks a little overvalued to me there. I think they are a good team that's going to get better as the year goes on. But at this moment, I don't think they're the 4th best team. I think and Newark challenged themselves with a tough schedule. They've been playing with injuries. I still think when it all shakes out, Newark belongs in the top 3, as well as Pelmac, again, stepping out of the league and the section for some games over the holiday break. They didn't fare too well, but I think top to bottom, they're solid in a top 5 team. And just like the girls, this is gonna be a Finger Lakes East heavy rankings at the top. You got Lions obviously as the outlier there. And Marcus Whitman is a Finger Lakes East team too, let's not forget, which if they were in the West, they might not lose many games this year. They're a pretty solid team, but they're gonna take a lot of losses this year in their league schedule. Hopefully prepare them for sectionals in what we already talked about. It's going to be a tough Class C1 classification. Great to see the Red Creek Rams back. Mid-Lakes doing the opposite of Marcus Whitman. They're going to pick up a lot of wins in the West that they wouldn't have if they had stayed in the Finger Lakes East. But also happy to see South Seneca / Romulus, I suppose, into the top 10 too. Combining those two teams, schools, going to definitely help their basketball prospects here. So I don't know, guys. What do you guys think about that?
I think we're going to learn a lot about Geneva in the next 10 days. At Palmac this week and at Newark next week. So I think those are going to be two great litmus tests for Geneva, and we're going to learn a lot about them.
And we're going to learn a lot about Palmac and Newark.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, is Newark? We got an injury update on the Steve kid.
I haven't heard anything.
Last time we saw him, he was in a boot, right?
Yeah, and it still was that way last time I saw him on a YouTube video in the background. It looked like he was still in a boot. So
it might, again, I think Newark should hold their own even without him, but they're definitely a different team when
Yeah,
not at
much
full
different.
strength.
yeah, for sure.
I think something that at least I picked up on the one game that we did with involving them was it justifiably so, right? The focus went to Rayshon Howard on offense, and I think teams can just plan better and easier to go against a Newark attack
Yes,
when
definitely.
you don't have to worry about two really prolific scorers. In all fairness, two separate ways of going about
Well,
it.
and inside outside too.
Right. That's what I was about to say. Where Steve, right, really good 3-point shooter. Rayshon's really great at cutting and driving. That you can kind of, if you really want to, you can, I guess, kind of go old school about it and just pack the lane and let him come in and try and figure it out at that point.
I've watched Rayshon Howard since he was a freshman, and to me, he seems like he should be able to dominate and carry his team against teams, like Waterloo and Geneva and Wayne and Minders and Finger Lakes East teams. And there's other complementary pieces in Newark too. I was surprised, despite the injury, to see how badly they lost at Waterloo, and I don't know if that was, just an enigma type of game, or if that's what we're going to see in the next couple weeks. Whether or not Steve's on the court, we'll see how Newark holds up. I think they're better than they've shown so far, and I think Rayshon Howard is better than he's shown so far.
I agree.
I do have a maybe potentially slight nitpick here, if anything, and it has nothing to do with any teams in particular. I just want to get maybe everybody's general thoughts on this a little bit. Just based on how idle some of these teams were last week, like we had Sodas in the top 10, for instance, last week, and they fell out as an idle team. Personally, I don't feel like that's fair to them in a way. I don't know about your guys' thoughts on it, but
Well, like everybody else, if they don't like it, they're going to have a chance to prove us wrong in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
Again, playing in a weak or Wayne County league, are they going to be one of those teams that look? They've always given Lions a little bit of trouble, even when Lions has been good and Sodas hasn't been good. But they need to. If they are that team, then they're going to need to beat everybody else that they play in Wayne County, even if they lose to Lions. So, and then I believe Sodas is going to be C1 school too, right?
they're either one or two. I can't remember off the top of my head though.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So
Sodas is C1.
yeah, so now Sodas has got to play in a league with Lions, and then they're going to have to see Lions in sectionals too. I mean, that's tough. They're not as good as Lions.
C1 is going to be really interesting. With Rochester Academy Charter School, you got Geneseo, Sodas, Lions.
Whitman.
Yeah, Marcus
Yeah.
Whitman, right?
Yep.
Bloomfield?
Yeah.
Or did we say
Yes.
Bloom? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, Lions isn't in C1.
They aren't?
Yeah, check it out. They go to C2 this year?
That's a pleasant surprise in them.
Well, for all those teams we just mentioned.
Wow.
I thought I did see something about C2, unless the website was wrong. But
No,
he might be onto something.
About that breaking news.
Sometimes
for
the
us on
websites
there.
are all different.
Yeah, Lions is in C3.
Wow.
Oh, C3. Okay. Who are the teams in C3?
Byron Burgeon, Warsaw, Cuba Rushford, South Seneca, CG Finney.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Finney's not that good
Byron
this year.
Burgeon's 7-0 last I looked.
Okay, so they might be the biggest contender. So now all of a sudden C1's open up
Yeah.
for all those teams we just mentioned.
That's going to be really fun.
Sheesh.
That's going to be a really competitive.
How about that then?
Things just got a whole lot interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they still could be. It still could turn into a state playoff,
Right.
state qualifier type of situation where you could see Lions taking on the C1 champ down the road, whether that's Geneseo or Rochester Academy Charter School.
Plus whatever C2 potentially has to offer in there. So that's the one cool thing, not to get too off track, that's one cool thing I like about C, though. You have the 3 different options coming out of there compared to, really you see A has a 1, 2, B has 1, 2, D, depending upon the year, has 1 or 2, but
it makes
C,
it
you got
tough.
3.
It makes it tough for that week between sectional titles and the state Far West regionals. They got to play that down. And there's a couple of years I remember there's some weather considerations, but some of the best games that I've seen have come in that C play down tournament. CG Finney against Lions in Newark was an incredible game.
I was going to say, wasn't the one of the games before the shutdown happened a few years ago? Wasn't that Lions and Cal Mum or something like that?
They did play.
In
I'm not sure if
2020?
that was that game, though, that you're talking about.
Yeah, Lions and Cal Mum with and
Wasn't
that was
game played
after
at
Cal
Newark?
Mum eliminated Marcus
Right,
Whitman down in Dansville, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyways, then Cal Mum beat Lions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that game was at Newark, and I believe you and somebody else were doing that game.
Oh, yeah, I did both those games in Newark, which credit to CG Finney and Cal Mum for coming all the way to Newark for those games. It's tough to find a location when you're in those situations, and those are both great games. And, the Cal Mum one went into overtime. Tootie Smith sent it to overtime with the last-second tip, and both times the atmosphere was just incredible. So maybe there'll be a situation like that coming up at the end of this season.
Can only hope. Speaking of looking ahead, perfect transition to look at our Lil John and Barbie week preview. Lil John and Barbie and their outstanding orthodontic team share a common goal to ensure the overall wellness of each of their patients through their exceptional orthodontic care. Dr. Rod Littlejohn and Dr. Liz Barbie are proud to support our area high school athletes. You can check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at littlejohnortho.com. So a quick look ahead here. We'll start on the girls' slate again. We'll keep it there. Beginning tomorrow on Tuesday, mentioned a little bit of Finger Lakes West matchups here, and right off the bat, South Seneca at Bloomfield, and then on the west side, or on the Wayne County side of things, also tomorrow, mentioned that one as well. East Rochester at Ganonda, so classic rivalry at least up in Wayne County there. And look, certainly a potential test for the Lady Bombers going and facing off in Ganonda there.
These teams play. These teams generally play each other annually. These are the theme of this month is the first few weeks of this month. We're going to sort out some of these situations here and see who's for real and who's a pretender.
Day after on Wednesday, Lions at Clyde Savannah. Obviously noted rivalry there against two teams that are very good also in Wayne County. And then Haverling at Newark with head coach Kearney's potential 400th win on the line Wednesday night as well.
The Lions-Clyde girls game is more of a rivalry now than the boys, which it should be a packed house in Clyde for that one. And remember, those two teams met 3 years ago in the sectional final? Or was it sectional semifinal? I think it was a sectional final in Canandaigua. And
I think it
Lions got the win.
Was that 3 years already? Wow.
Yeah, I think it was at least 3 years ago. Kristen Bassett was the head coach of Lions. Caden Crago was the point guard.
Yep.
That was a great Lions team. Actually, that was a semifinal matchup.
I'm pretty sure it was. Now I'm thinking back on it. I'll say usually the girls' side, they're either up at Gates Shiloh for the finals, right, or Rush Henrietta the past.
No, that was a semifinal doubleheader. Red Creek was in the other half with
Izzy Wilbur.
Izzy Wilbur, yeah.
No really true noble game on Thursday. Friday, though, and again, another potentially big Wayne County matchup, East Rochester at Clyde Savannah. So the Golden Eagles hosting a couple of big games this week.
Yeah, they have an interesting week ahead. I mean, they've, dropped 2 in a row now?
Yeah.
So
does East Rochester. Ganonda and Clyde are probably their two biggest contenders in Wayne County. So great week for Wayne County girls basketball.
And then on Saturday, the first chapter of the rivalry this year locally, Waterloo at Minders, taking place.
Well, it's been a while since Minders has beaten Waterloo. I don't know. I don't know what to think about that one. I mean, I think that Minders has enough talent to beat Waterloo, but I don't know if they'll be able to take care of the ball against that pressure. I don't know if they'll be able to keep their composure, only because I've seen it before. So it's at home. So if you're going to do it, this will be the time to do it. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, too. I mean, there's a few different rivalry games, obviously, especially on the girls' slate that, look, rivalries, I've always said it, just throw whatever you're usually to the window a little bit because you never know what might happen anyway.
That's why they play the games, Paul.
Oh, yeah. Been used to hearing that. Let's check out the boys' slate of things getting going technically tonight. They do have a game tonight, but first game worth noting for me is on Wednesday. Victor at Newark. You know, Jim, you mentioned about how Newark, they tend to try and get some other really outside opponents to play them, and such is the case as Victor comes to town on Wednesday night.
Yeah, Victor coming to Newark, huh?
That's interesting.
And I believe, is Victor 6-3, or am I thinking of the wrong team? Okay.
Yeah, their Victor's not as strong as they have been the past couple years, but they're still a double-A opponent. And again, you know, a great opportunity for Newark to gain some tremendous sectional points, but you know, I would rather see Lions come 5 minutes to the west to play Newark than Victor come bringing in Victor. But kudos to Victor too for being willing to do it. You know, double-A team versus a B team, so they're putting more on the line in terms of sectional points. I just wish Newark would play Lions. So they're right next door. It would be a great game. But good litmus test for Newark here. If they can be a great way to kind of get some of those sectional points back that they've lost over the past few weeks in some of their losses.
Yeah, and then moving forward to Thursday, Sodus at East Rochester, a couple of the better teams in Wayne County going at there, at least of what we've seen so far. But mainly the one we're looking at is Geneva at Palmac. We will be there as an FL1 broadcast, working once again with the students up at Palmac, and we always look forward to doing those games. But this one in particular, you know, we mentioned obviously a couple of different times in this podcast, this is a pretty big truth test here for both teams.
Yeah, it'd be a good game to watch if you're looking to get you first look at the Geneva Panthers. Remember, Ed Collins coaching now, better known for coaching the girls program over the years, but back coaching the boys here. His son Tyler, an assistant, former great point guard at Newark. You'll see a lot of familiar faces on Palmac, some new faces on Geneva, and that should be right down to the wire.
Yeah, the atmosphere should be really great, especially, which one of you guys are going, or you guys are both going?
One of us is,
okay. Yeah. So whoever goes, it's going to be a great atmosphere, for sure.
And then looking ahead as well, Friday again, Newark enters in as they head off to Marcus Whitman for a league matchup there in the East. A little bit, again, of a possible litmus test for the Wildcats here to kind of see where they really gauge up against one of the top teams in the East.
Well, I know Marcus Whitman gets up for situations like this. And again, so now, I just don't get it. Newark's going to travel to Marcus Whitman, which is a C1 team, but they probably feel like they can win that one. But they won't have Lions from across town to come play, which is, again, C1, C2, C3 doesn't matter. For our sectional points, if they're in C, it's the same whether they're 1 or 3. So Newark playing a double-A team earlier in the week and then playing a C team at the end of the week. Marcus Whitman, Coach O'Connor gets his kids up for games like this, so this could be a disaster week for Newark. Or they could beat Victor, or even if they lose to Victor, they gotta beat Marcus Whitman. Otherwise, and again, that's a league game for them, which is kind of strange. Victor used to be a Finger Lakes East team back in the day. Marcus Whitman went from the west to the east after being in the east. But still, and I'll probably harp on it every single episode. Why not? If you're going to bring Victor to town and you're going to go to Marcus Whitman, why can't you play Lions? They're 5 minutes down the road. You're historic rivals, but you've played one time in 46 years.
Yeah.
Actually, now it's been more than 46. Probably one time in 52 years.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Yeah.
Can't agree more, Jim. Can't agree more.
We love rivalry games here, obviously, and especially stuff like that. But not to, I guess, get too far off on that, Jim. Saturday, a game that we are also we're trying to get up to do is Avoca Prattsburgh traveling up to Lions
in the community center.
Yep.
Hey, Lions is finally playing someone legit. Nice to see.
Yeah, and not at the Atwood. It'll be in the community center, which hopefully fans turn out for that. I've seen them play Clyde in the community center. I've seen them play North Star Christian in the community center. It's just a bigger atmosphere. Atwood's great, but if you got a game with enough interest to fill that community center, it's better there. It's a beautiful court, Bob Oman Court. Yeah, we'll be there for that one, and that could be Lions' best test of the year.
Yeah, and I believe they played last year. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Plattsburgh ended up pulling away late, I believe.
Yeah, down in Plattsburgh, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, this is an AP team that they've had a stranglehold on Class D for a while, anyway, within the area. I mean, let alone other aspirations. I mean, they're a contender within the state every year for the crown.
Yeah, they can really shoot. They got a lot of depth. I see a lot of times they're scoring 80, 90 points a game. I know some of the competition, again, is probably not the best, but, putting those numbers up probably with your starters, too, sitting a lot in the fourth quarter, it's pretty impressive.
Right.
That's what we thought, too, last year. We'll see how Plattsburgh does against Lions, and they did just fine. So, but again, this will be a different atmosphere. They're taking the almost 2-hour drive up here to Wayne County on Route 31, and they're going to be playing in the community center, which is probably a little easier on them than if they were playing in the Atwood, but nonetheless should be a hostile environment, and maybe one of the games of the year so far.
For sure. Definitely agree with that. So, anybody final tidbits before we head out of here? Those were my main, I guess, looks at for the week. So
I just wish I could get inside the gyms over this past week and watch some of these practices, because the teams that come to these holiday week practices with a sense of purpose, practice hard. I just wish I could see, because there's so much. We're going to find out about a lot of these teams going forward when we watch them on the court, but I bet you I could have gained a lot of insight, Joe, just watching how they practice during this holiday week. But nonetheless, that's what January is all about. Here we are on January 2nd, come end of the month, 4 weeks from now. Everything's going to be a lot clearer. Hopefully Newark can get healthy, and but all these questions that we talked about will be answered on the court. That's why sometimes on this podcast get a lot of fan mail, if you want to call it that, but people that maybe disagree. And I said, well, prove me wrong. It doesn't matter what I say. They don't award wins by who we predict. So these are going to be some fun games in January to sort things out ahead of the February final push and then sectionals, which is just great. Yeah,
for sure. Kyle, appreciate hopping on. We'll have you back on, obviously, for sure. And just to give everybody a background for them, I mean, you're the man behind the scores every night, and appreciate the hard work
every night.
That.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun being on the show today. I love posting the scores and stats at night, and just getting a look, at what's going around, all the counties. I mean, even that buzzer beater, it was 3-4 weeks ago with Nolan Saluka. Yeah. Nobody had that covered, and I happened to be watching the game when it happened, so I was like, oh, wow, I need to get this right out.
Yep.
So it was perfect. But, yeah.
We have the best coverage. Some of our competitors, let's say, will have it covered, but not as quick as we do. It might take them a day or two.
Yeah, I usually start about 9 o'clock every night, starting to plug in stuff. So
it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah. Nate, appreciate the hard work behind there, as always.
And for doing some of those sectional classification referencing. Yeah. I should get that down. I'm a little embarrassed. I was thinking Lions was in C1, but
makes two of us.
Again, it's been preseason. Now in January, can't have those types of mistakes anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So Thursday night in Palmac, Geneva.
Correct.
Finger Lakes want to be there. Either me or Paul on the call, along with the Palmac
7:30?
7:30.
7 o'clock, 7:30 start? Okay. And Saturday night, 5:30 start, right, at the community center?
5 flat.
Or 5
Double
flat,
check that,
excuse me. Yep, that'll be Paul and I
start time.
against AP. And
Game of the year.
good
Should
too.
be a lot of outside interest in that one.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening, as always.
Happy New Year, basketball fans.
That's right. I forgot that again. But, again, thanks to our sponsors, Sano Propane, Generations Bank, and Little John and Barbie Orthodontics. If you can't watch live, you can catch up anytime here on YouTube. Make sure you stick around for our coverage later on, courtesy of Kyle Evans. And we'll talk to everybody again next week on the Upstate Hoops Podcast. Take it easy, everybody. We'll talk to you then.